Hi friends, welcome to my BAMU'S Biogenius channel. Today we will discuss about nature interpretation. This topic is useful for UG and PG students. Now we know the meaning of nature. Now we have to discuss about the meaning of interpretation. According to US National Park Service definition, see the definition is interpretation facilitates a connection between the interest of the visitor and the meaning of the resource. So this is the simplest definition of interpretation. Now there are several definitions that has been given by different scientists. One of them is the father of heritage interpretation. His name was Freeman Tilden, and he wrote a book on interpretation of heritage in 1957. According to him, an educational activity which aims to reveal meanings and relationships through the use of original objects by first-hand experience and by illustrative media rather than simply to communicate factual information. So here, when he talks about original objects means that may be a photograph, that may be a model, that may be a stuffed animal, whatever it may be. So, or the monument itself. That means he was of the opinion that the interpretation is a educational activity and it gives a visitor a first-hand experience about that particular um, object. So this is the definition of a prematilde. Then another pioneer in this field is Dr. Sam Ham. According to him, interpretation is an approach to communication. It involves translating the technical language of a natural science or related field into terms and ideas that people who aren't scientists can readily understand. So these are the two definitions of interpretation. Now here, when Dr. Samham uh, defines the interpretation, he emphasizes on the translation of a technical language into the simplest language that people understands. So this is about the definitions of interpretation. Now, if we summarize all these definitions, what a conclusion that we get is that the interpretation is a process and it includes or it serves to connect the visitor to something, the resource. Now, what I have told you about that, what is the resource? That something means that may be a photograph, that may be a model, that may be a stuffed animal, that may be any kind of a monument. So it connects that visitor to that particular object or a resource on both an emotional and intellectual level. So this is the main point of the interpretation. And another point is more than mere information. So this process is more than giving just the information, but it also uh, involves the what we call it as the connection in between the visitor and that particular animal or whatever it may be, that the resource. So this is the summary of all the definitions of interpretation. So it is not just giving information or involves more than just reciting facts, dates and lists. So it is more than the information. Now before going for understanding of nature interpretation, first of all we should know the difference between the environmental education and nature interpretation. in case of interpretation, whenever we deals with the interpretation, we deals with the non-captive audiences. That means these non-captive audiences means what? These are the audiences that came to you to understand the nature. That is, they came to you as a voluntary, or they are leisure based, or they are internally motivated to understand the environment or nature. Whereas in case of environmental education, it often deals with the students who are captive audiences. Now here, captive audiences means they are externally motivated, usually by the grade. So they came to you for uh, making grades. So that's why they are not called as or they cannot be considered as internally motivated. They are externally motivated by the grades. So this is the difference between the environmental education and nature interpretation. Now there are four qualities of interpretation. According to Sam Ham, these four qualities should be used for interpretation. First quality should be theme. So whatever the object that you want to display before the visitors, that should have a kind of a theme. Then whatever the information that you want to give to the people, or whatever the um, uh, or you want to make a connection in between the visitor and that object, for that purpose your information should be very well organized. Then third one is the relevance. So that information should be relevant to that particular theme and object. And most important thing, that is that information should be enjoyable. So this is the qualities of interpretation that that particular interpretation should have. Now if we see the qualities of interpretation, first one is a theme. It is a short, simple, complete sentence with one idea, that is called as a theme. We know that every program has a theme, and it reveals the activity of that program. So this one is the first quality of interpretation. Then the next one is it should be organized, easy to understand and follow for your audience. So this includes the short introduction, then the body of the particular program, and the conclusion of the program. So that should be highlighted. So that gives a kind of organized structures to your program. Then interpretation should be relevant. That means it should be meaningful. Meaningful means what? It has a certain kind of intellectual value, or we can say it has a intellectual connect. Then it should be personal. That means that interpretation should have a emotional connection also. So this is about the another quality of interpretation. Then the most important of all of them is this nature interpretation should be enjoyable. So this is the most important quality. That is because we have different types of audience with us, and um, that audience should not be or should not get bored. So the interpretation should be enjoyable. Now see, what is the purpose of interpretation? Purpose of interpretation is to stimulate the reader hearer towards a desire to widen his horizon of interest and knowledge, to gain understanding of truth that lie behind the statement of facts, and to search out meanings for himself. So this is the purpose of interpretation. See, one very famous hypothesis in psychology is that learning leads to loving. So here, if they know what we know, they will care as we care. This is the idea behind this nature interpretation. See, interpretation leads to understanding of that particular um, object. Then this understanding leads to appreciation, and then this appreciation leads to protection. So this is the idea behind the interpretation, that we have to provoke that audiences to understand particular kind of a thing, or here in this case we are making them to understand the nature. We are making them to appreciate the nature, and by them, or because of this understanding and appreciation, now they will have a desire to protect that particular nature. So this is how we are prompting, we are provoking them via nature interpretation to protect the environment or a nature. So this is the main, we can say, the theme of our topic, or we can say our paper, that is nature interpretation. Now, as I have told you that to understand this, how the interpretation works for a protection, we will take an example of this object. We will describe this object. See here, object that may be anything, that may be a photograph, that may be a um, model. So here we are taking this photograph for interpretation. Now this bird is called as a Indian grey hornbill or common grey hornbill. This bird is found in India, and this bird is having a horn on its bill. That's why it is called as a hornbill. The color is grey. That's why it is a grey hornbill, and it is commonly found in India. That's why it is a common Indian grey hornbill. Now this bird is carrying a piece of mud in its beak. Now why this bird is using this beak, or using this mud for the whatever its purpose? See here, this bird uses that piece of mud to build its nest. Now its nest is inside the tree cavity, and this bird uses this mud to seal this particular cavity, and it incarcerates the female and its chick inside this tree cavity, and it, for the whole season, this bird provides food to its female and to the chicks. So this is the reason that this bird is carrying this mud. You can see here, it is like this. So this is a grey hornbill. Although this is a different grey hornbill, but all these hornbills, they show such a type of behavior where they incarcerates female inside the tree cavity along with its chick, and for the whole season this single male bird provides food to the chick and to the female also. So you will not find such a kind of a example of caretaking of a female during its um, period of raising their um, young ones. So you can see here, this is how that the hornbill takes care of its female as well as its uh, chicks. Now we will discuss about the principles of interpretation by Freeman Tilden. You can correlate all these principles with the our previous explanation of that gray common gray hornbill. First principle is any interpretation that does not somehow relate what is being displayed or described to something within the personality or experience of the visitor will be sterile. So, see here that whatever the object that you are displaying to your visitors or to your audience, that should be known to that particular audience. So, this is what the first principle means. Then, number two, information as such is not interpretation. Interpretation is a revelation based upon information, but they are not entirely different things. However, all interpretation includes information. So, whatever that you are, the photograph that you have seen, that photograph includes the information about various things. But along with that, it is more than the information, because we are studying, we are looking at the particular behavior of that particular bird. So it is not just a information, but it includes information along with the certain kinds of things that are related to the behavior of that bird. Then the third is interpretation is an art which combines many arts, whether the materials presented are scientific, historical, or architectural. Any art is in some degree teaching. So whenever we are talking about that particular photograph, um, it is we can say that um, it is understandable that this particular photograph should be taken at which particular time. You can see here that that particular photograph is taken or clicked in the act, or we can say that that particular bird is having that piece of mud in its beak. So we should train ourselves to take such a photograph. We should train ourselves to take a photograph when the bird is in act. So this is how that this is an art. So taking a photograph, a perfect photograph is an art. So this is the meaning of the third principle of the interpretation. The fourth one is the chief aim of interpretation is not instruction but provocation. Now, whatever the photograph that I have shown to you, that photograph tells us about the particular behavior of that animal. It also tells us, or it provokes us to get connect with that particular bird. And now, even if you want it, but still you will not be able to hurt that bird. So this is what we are going towards, the protection of a nature. From interpretation we are going towards the protection of a nature. So this one is the fourth principle of interpretation by Freeman Taylor. And the last one is interpretation should aim to present a whole rather than a part, and must address itself to the whole man rather than any phase. So this is a last year principle where, um, for example, we have taken that particular photograph. So we are explaining the behavior of that bird in a whole season by just clicking one photograph, one part of its life, one part of its phase, and we are explaining the whole thing to the audiences. So this is how that interpretation should aim to present a whole rather than the part of the object. So this is the last principle of interpretation by Freeman Tilden. So according to Dave Malden, the essence of interpretation is to inspire, provoke, and spark a flame in your audience. Seek to what their appetite rather than the stuff them full with every fact you know. You want to make them realize why the resource is important to you and to them. so that interpretation results in better informed public. So even if they don't agree with you on an issue, they understand better what the issue involves and are able to see more sides than just their own. So this is the we can say that the take home message of our course. So it's time for the quiz. Please scan this QR code and solve this quiz for a better understanding of the topic nature interpretation. Marks and answers will be emailed to you. So thank you very much for a patient hearing. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, BAMU'S Biogenius, for latest uploads or like my videos and comment. Thank you.